Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Next, the author discusses the purification dues that are on camels. He says, the purification dues are due on camels when there are five, that is, camels. One owes a camel lamb. Actually, this should be one owes a sheep or lamb as opposed to a camel lamb. So the word camel in this case should be omitted. One is to render this 1 to 2 year old male lamb or sheep for each 5 camels until the number reaches 25. The author then says, when there are 25 camels, one owes a bint mahad. A bint mahad is a 2-year-old female calf, that is to say, a calf for whom 1 lunar year has passed since its birth, and this refers to a camel calf. The author continues by saying, whatever exceeds that, that is 25, the minimum amount is well known. We will detail the purification dues regarding camels for more than this. Nothing else is due until the number of camels reaches 36, after which a bint labun is due. A bint labun is a 2-year-old female camel calf. Nothing else is due until the number of camels reaches 46. When it reaches 46, a hiqqa is due. A hiqqa is a 3-year-old female camel calf. This is the case until the number reaches 61, after which a jadha'a is due. A jadha'a is a 4-year-old female camel calf. When the number of camels reaches 76, 2 bint labuns are due. Nothing else is due until the number reaches 91, after which 2 hiqqas are due. This is the case until the number reaches 120. Then, according to the ahkam of Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam, for every 50 camels after that, one owes a hiqqa. The author then discusses the purification dues on cows. He says, regarding cows, the purification dues are due when there are 30. That is to say that there are no dues for cows if the number is less than 30. If the number reaches 30, one is to give a 1-year-old calf. The author specifies regarding this calf by saying, it is either a male or female tabi'u. Then, when the number exceeds that, no one owes anything else until the number of cows reaches 40. Then the author says, for every 40 cows, one owes a musinna. A musinna is a 2-year-old cow. This is the case until the number reaches 60, after which one is to render 2 male or 2 female 1-year-old calves. When the number of cows reaches 70, one then owes a 1-year-old calf and a musinna. This is because the dues for 30 calves is a 1-year-old calf, and the dues for 40 cows is a musinna. When the number reaches 80 cows, one owes 2 musinnas. And when the number of cows reach 90, one owes 3 1-year-old calves. When the number reaches 100, one owes 2 1-year-old calves and a musinna. One continues to follow that same pattern of a 1-year-old calf for every 30 and a musinna for every 40 cows. Question: what happens when one has 120 cows? Does one render 3 musinnas or 4 1-year-old calves? According to the madhab, one is to render 3 musinnas. This is because the musinna is considered more beneficial and useful to the poor person. Next, the author mentions the purification dues on sheep. The Arabic word used for sheep in this text is general and can refer to both sheep and goats. The author says, regarding sheep, for every 40 sheep, the purification dues is a lamb. In the case of a goat, of course, it refers to a goat kid. The lamb or kid rendered as dues must be an age suitable for sacrifice. Only a lamb can be given for sheep, and only a kid can be given for goats. There is nothing due when the number of sheep or kid falls below 40. The author then says, this is the case up until the number reaches 120 sheep. After that, 2 lambs are due up until 201 sheep. That is, when the number reaches 201, 3 sheep are due. The author continues by saying, 3 lambs are due up until 400 sheep. Then after that, one owes 4 sheep. Afterwards, for every 100 sheep, one owes a sheep. That is, one owes a lamb or kid for every 100 sheep after that. Regarding the 3 aforementioned categories of cattle and the zakat, he says, it is a precondition regarding the obligation of zakat that the cattle graze for the whole year or the majority of it on either end. Otherwise, it doesn't count. That is to say that if the cattle does not graze at the beginning and end of a lunar year, or more than half of the lunar year, the zakat is not due on such animal. If the animal is used to bear a load a couple of times a year, it would still be considered grazing and thus subject to zakat after a lunar year has passed over it. However, if they bear loads or are used for any other commercial purposes for the majority of the year, which is more than half, the animal would be considered a laborer and thus not subject to zakat. Furthermore, if an animal is used for the owner's private transportation, it is not subject to zakat. Although not mentioned in this text, there are also some rules regarding the joint ownership of cattle. If 2 men jointly own 5 camels or 40 sheep, no zakat is necessary for either of the men. If both own 10 camels or 80 sheep, and each owns half, they each have to give 1 sheep. If 2 men jointly own 80 sheep, and one of them owns 3/4 of the sheep, while the other owns 1/4, the dues collector takes 1 sheep. Then the owner of the majority gives the owner of the minority a value of quarter of the number of sheep. If they have 100 sheep between them, and one of them owns 3/5 while the other owns 2/5, the zakat of 1 sheep is taken from each. When the dues collector takes the 2 sheep, the owner of the majority gives the owner of the minority the value of 1/5 of the sheep. The same applies to the joint ownerships of camels and cows, whether there are 2 owners or more. The next section deals with what's extracted from the earth. The author says, it is due upon what grows from the earth, that is, once the nisab is reached after a year's time. As we mentioned before, the nisab refers to the minimum amount that the thing must be before the zakat is due on it. The nisab for measurable crops is 300 sa'a. Just to give you an idea of the size of a sa'a, it is roughly the measure of 4 two-handed scoops of a medium-sized man. In the case of a non-measurable crop, the nisab is the estimated value of 200 dirham. The author continues by saying, even if it is from owned woods and it is due from what is extracted as payments, such as pruned branches. That is to say that in the case of a forest that one owns, the zakat is to be taken from the value of every type of tree or plant. So if the forest consists of various types of trees and plants, the zakat will be due when each tree or plant type reaches the nisab. It is not calculated based on the joint value of the whole forest. The author goes on to say regarding the zakat on both measurable and non-measurable crops, 1/10 of that which is watered by a dam is due. The more general principle is that 1/10 is due on any crop which is watered by artificial means such as dams, buckets, and animals. Anything other than that, that is, other than those crops watered by artificial means, 1/10 is due. So this would mean that a full 1/10 is due on any crop watered by the rain, as well as natural flowing rivers and streams. In the case that a crop is watered by natural means and artificial means, one is to render the zakat based on that ratio once a lunar year has passed. For example, if a person utilized buckets to water the crops for 2/3 of the year, and rain was used for 1/3, one would render 1/10 from the 2/3 and 1/10 from the remaining third. Regarding all matters related to calculating the zakat, the author says, it is religiously obligatory to thoroughly investigate both large and small.